Yeah, hello there and welcome back, and let us continue with our lesson over here. And today we are going to learn about the Riverpod life cycle and how we can use the life cycle of the Riverpod inside our application to make it more better. So let's go and get started over here. And first of all, I have added some of the dependency over here that will be of the Flutter Riverpod over here, and then the HTTP Riverpod annotation, phrase annotation, and then the build runner in the depth dependency, Riverpod generator, phrase, and then the Flutter link that is by default over here. And once you have added this, you can just go and run the Flutter pub get. And once the dependency are downloaded, you can go to the main.the file and run your app, right? So you just provide the provider scope over here before the my app, or if you have a different name, that's perfectly fine. Just wrap the my app with the provider scope over here. So whenever we are using the Riverpod, we have to wrap the main app or the whatever you have given a name with the provider scope. And once you are done with that, we are good to go to use the Riverpod over here. And I have just created a simple project that is the counter app, right? So if you can see, we have a counter app by default, so I haven't made change to it. So let's go and create a new folder over here, and let's call this one as the API. We will be connecting to the API to make some requests to learn about the Riverpod lifecycle. And for that, let's create a new file, and let's make this one as the API underscore servic service.it.file. And let's create the class over here that will be of the API ser service over here. And we will make use of the const of the let's say this is the string, and we'll just say base URL over here. And let's make some URL over here that will be of so let's copy some URL that I have already over here. So let me copy the URL over here and let's paste it over here. And that will be of the we'll be using a JSON placeholder. All right, so this will be our base URL, and we have some error over here. So let's remove this const, and let's make this one as a final over here. And once we have the final over here, so let's go and create a new function over here, if you to your future, and this will return us the list of the DOI and MIC dynamics dynamic over here. And let's say get the post over here, and let's make this one as the asynchronous, and this should be of the get the post over here, and future get post, and I guess that should be fine. So we have to close it over here one more time, and now we have the function. And let's go inside the body, and let's say final another, let's create a final variable of the response over here. And let's make use of a HTTP. So let's go on to the top and let's import the HTTP package over here, and let's call this one as the HTTP over here, sorry, as the HTTP over here. And once we are done with that, let's go down and let's make this await and HTTP dot the get request. So we'll send a get request with our we need to pass it. So URI dot the parse, and we'll parse our base URL over here. And then we also, okay, so what we have to do is, let's close this one first of all. So what we need to do is we also need to provide the end URL or the endpoint. So let's say this is of the base URL, and then let's add in the path or the API endpoint posts over here. And once we are done with that, we have the we are making the call to the API over here, and we'll just check for the condition that if the response that we have, dot the status code we get each of equals to 200. That means each of the success. So let's try to make it a bit cleaner over here. And once we have that, let's go and return from here. We'll return the JSON decode. Let's decode it, and I'll just decode the response that we have dot the body. And once we have that, we are good with it. This means that we have successfully get the response, and now we have decoded back and send it, right? So once we have that, on the else part, let's go and make in the else part, we'll just go and throw some error from here. Let's throw the exception, and in the exception, let's call this one as the API call API already failed, or something that you want to provide over here. So our class is ready, and the next thing is let's go back to and let's create a new folder over here, and let's call this one as the provid rs providers. And in this provider, we will create a one provider. Let's create a two provider. So first of all, let's go and create a new file over here, and let's call this one as the post underscore list provid provider dot the dot file. And this will be of the final, and then the post list provi provider, which will be of a state provider. So we'll just make use of a simple state provider over here, and then let's make this one as the type will be of the list, right? This is what we are getting from the API. So list of the dynamic over here, and then let's have the default value for this one. So what we will return from here is a list, or the empty list as a default value. And once we have all of this, our post list provider is ready, and let's create the another file that will be of the API servic service, right? So API service provi provider dot the dot file. And with this API service provider, we are going to call the API over here. So let's go over here, and let's make this one as a final, and then the API as your service provider. So provi provider, and which is equals to the future and the future provider. So we'll make use of the future provider over here, and the type, let's put in the type over here, and the type will be of the list, and then list will be of the dynamic over here, and the return type. So let's go and make this one as a body over here. So once we have that, let's close it over here, and let's go and make a call to the API over here. So if you go to the our API service over here, we don't have the provider, so we need to access this class. So in order to access this class, we'll create the provider over here. That will be of the API servic service, and so I guess the naming is conflicting over here. We have the API service provider, so let's create this one first of all. And let's import the Riverpod over here, and then the return type will be of the API service over here, and let's return the API service from here. So we have the API service provider, so let's rename this file over here, and let's rename this one to a different one. So let's say post provider provider. I guess that should be I guess it's not a good name, but let's keep it as that one. So let's make this one as a post provider over here, and provi provider. And once we have that, let's go down and let's have the final of the API service over here. That will be of the API service API service provider provider. And okay, so what I need to do is let me go and make use of ref dot the watch over here, and let's watch our provider. So now we are watching the provider over here, and this will give us the instance of our provider. So I guess let me import that one over here. Okay, I can't import it, so let's go back over here and let's see what is the name. So let's copy this one from here, and let's go back and let's paste it over here. And can we import that? So now we can import it. So that's cool. So now we have the API service and we can make a call to the API. So I'll say of final over here, and that will be of the post, which is of equals to the await. So we have to make use of await over here, and then the API service dot, what we need is the get post over here. And in order to make this, we have to make use of the async over here, right? And once we have that, what we will do is let's go and add it over here. So once we have the posts, so what we'll do is we will try to return from here our list, right? So let's go down, and I guess we will add this post to our state that we have created. So let's make use of the post list provider over here. So ref dot the read. So let's read our what we need is the post list provider over here, and then I'll just go and add that. Let's add the list over here, list of the posts, and once we have added, let's go and return a value from here. That will be of the ref dot the read over here again. Let's go and read our post list provider over here. So this will return us the list now. So now our the API service that we have over here, we are making use in the post provider over here. So we are calling the API, right? So here let's make a call to API and get the posts, right? So now we get the post, and then we add here, we update the state of our post, right? So post post list provider, and then from here we will return from here we will return a post list. So return a post list. So once we have all of this, we are good to go. So let's go to our let's go and create a new file, and let's make this one as a new folder, and let's call this one as the screen over here. And with this screen, let's go and create a new file over here. So I guess we'll make this one as the post underscore the list underscore the scr screen over here dot the dot file, and let's create the stateful widget over here, and I guess that should be fine. Let's give a name of this one as the post list screen over here, and let's import the stateful widget, which is from the material package, and let's make this one as the const over here. So let's return the scaffold from here, and let's add the app bar, that will be of the app bar, and let's add the title over here, and the title will be of the const of the text, and then the text let's keep as the posts post the post list over here. So now we have all of this. Let's go and close it over here, and let's have the body over here. So once we have the body, so in the body let's return the consumer over here, which is from the Riverpod, right? You can also make use of the consumer stateful widget, but that's fine. So let's try to just make use of it over here as a consumer over here, since we don't have to make use of the ref object outside of this build function. So let's go and have this builder over here. So in the builder, we will require the context over here, and then we'll require the ref object, right? And then we'll require the child over here, child, the child over here. And let's close it over here. That should be fine. And once we have that, what we need is, let's go and have the final of the posts that we have. That will be of equals to the we need a ref object here, ref dot the watch. We are going to watch our posts list provider. I guess this is the posts provider, and I guess that should be fine. So once we have that, let's go and have a return value from here. So let's return what we have is the posts, right? Posts dot the when. So this is a future, so we can make use of the when, and here we have the option to make use of the data, error, and then the loading. So let's arrange this one properly. First of all, let's make use of the future, or we can call this one as a post future, future, not to get confused. So once we have the future over here, in the data we will get the let's say this is of the posts posts, and let's have the body for this one, and from here let's return a simple list view. So list list view over here. Let's make use of the list view builder over here, and let's have the item builder over here, and with this builder let's have the context, the child, context, context, and then I need an index over here, right? index index. So once we have that, let's go down over here, and let's close it over here, and let's end it over here. So let's go and add the item count first of all. So item count will be the posts that we have dot the length. So once we get the length, let's go down over here. Now we can get the single post over here. Final, and we have the post which is of equals to the post that we have, not this post, so posts posts, and let's add in the index over here, so to get a single post over here. And once we have that, let's return from here a simple list style over here, and with this list style let's pass in the title, and we will have the title over here that will be of the text, and we'll get the once we can get that from our post over here, so post post over here, and we'll grab the title from here, and then let's go and have the another one over here that will be of the let's see, a subtitle. So in this subtitle we will make it as a text over here again, and that will be of from the post, and we'll grab the body from here, so body body, and I guess that should be fine. And let's close it over here. So we have a simple list style, and let's go on to the down to the error, and in the error it's a function. So let's go and return from here. Let's go and return from here. Let's go and return, and I will go and return the we have to, okay, so it takes the error, and it also has the so we can just say e comma the s for the error and the stack trace over here, because it takes the stack trace and then the error over here. So let's go and return from here the const of the center, and with the center I can have the child, and child I will return the circular progress indicator dot the adaptive. Okay, that should be fine, and let's close it over here, and let's go down in the loading, so it takes the function as well, and from here let's go and return in the center. So I'll just use the center over here dot the child over here, and then use the circular progress indicator dot the adaptive, and let's make this one as the const as well. Let's close it over here. So we are good with that, and our post list screen should be good enough. So let's go back to our main.dart file, and we have this particular the button over there, floating action button. I'll convert that one to the extended over here, and instead of this I'll make use of the icon over here, and then the tooltip. Let's go and have the title over here, and I guess the title is not there, so let's go and see what we can add in over here. So it should have the tooltip, and another one is the unpressed, and we require the label, so not the title, so label over here. Label will be of the text, right? So let's have the text over here, and let's make this one as the post list over here, and let's make this one as the const over here. And also I will add the one more that will be of the hero tag. Later we will have, if we have a multiple one, then we'll get an error. So let's have the post list as well. So once we have this, I guess we are good to go. And once we press this one, we want to navigate back to our the post list. So navr gato navigator dot of context, and a dot, I will use a push over here, and then the route, yes, make use of the matr material page route over here. And then in the builder, I'm not going to use anything, so let's pass in the underscore, and let's return our post list screen from here, and let's close it over here, and we can make this one as the const. And then I guess we are good to go, so we can go and remove this function call from here. And now you can also remove, I guess, this one, and let's go down over here in the counter. By default, let's just give a 0 text over there, and let's try to hot reload our application over here, and now we get a post list over here. So you can click on this one, and now you can see that we got a loading state, and then we got the list of our posts over here. So what we want to do over here is we want to understand the life cycle. So let's go back to our API over here, and let's go over here, and let's add in the sum of the log over here. So on the whenever we call this particular function, let's debug it. So debug print over here. So debug print debug print over here, and over here let's put something like the I will make use of the API service, and then we'll just say the get the posts over here, right? So we know that now we have this over here. So once we have that, which means that we are calling the function to get the API post, and let's go on to the top over here, and I guess we will add in the on our this provider also. So we want to check the provider, so let's go and say that now the API service provider is initialized. So init init, which means that it has been initialized. And now we can make use of the ref object that we have over here, and dot, and now you can see we got a couple of the life cycle that you can take a look. So on cancel, on dispose, we have on resume, and then we have the add listener, and then on a remove listener, right? So let's make use of this one. So first of all, let's say a cancel. So whenever we have the cancel over here, let's say that we want to return, I guess we will return the let me close it from here first of all, and let's go and have this API service, and let's copy the whole point from here. So let me copy this one, and let's paste it over here, And I guess we are good with that. So we have some error over here, so that's because I think we have this comma over here. And let's say that this is of the we can just say this is the API post provider service CS NCL cancel CANCEL cancel, right? So now this has been cancelled, and now let's add the another one that will be on the on resume over here, and we'll just say that the cancel or on resume is called, so we know that. So just copy this one, and then we have that. So let's add in the few more that we require over here, and the next one will be on then the dispose over here, and we'll say that this has been disposed over here. And let's have the another two that we require, that will be of the on the add listener. So we'll just say that the listener has been added, and then on the remove listener, so we will just copy this one and paste it over here. So now we have all of this function, and let's copy the whole point of this particular code from here, and let's go back to our provider over here. So we'll go to the let's go to the post provider, and let's put on the top over here, and let's import the foundation package. I guess that should be fine, and this will be of the post provider. So post provider init, and then we have the, let's replace all of this from here. Now we are good with that. You can also copy the code from here, and you can go to the post list provider, so we don't have any of the option from here. If you want, you can just remove this one from here, and you can just add it from here. And let's import the package first of all, and we have to return the list from here. So let's return empty list from here, and I guess we are good with that. So once we have all of this, let's go and open up our console, and what we can do is, I guess we can make this one something different. So how do we want to watch all of this is, I guess let's watch for the log of the provider over here, and let's try to hot reload over here. And once we have, let's go to the so now you can see there is no log over here. So once we go over to our post list, which you can see that we have some logs. So Flutter post provider init, right? So this is the post provider that we have, so which means that it has been initialized now. And then the API service, which is calling the API service, now it has been initialized again. And then the API service provider, we are calling the function to add that has been added to our listener, so which means that we are watching. So ref.watch, that means we are watching, and it has been added to the listener. And post provider is also added to a listener, right? So post provider, which each of this post provider has been added to the listener. And then we have the post provider in it, so it has been initialized. So finally, which is the post provider that we have, it has been initialized over here. And I guess we have this post provider 2 times, so let's go and take a look. Post list, so I guess this should be post list and not a post provider. So let's rename this one. So I hadn't replaced this one, so that's why it was a double printout over there. So let's try to redo it, and let's go to the post list. Now we should get a post provider API service provider in it, and the API service provider has been added to the listener, and then the post provider has been added to the listener, and then finally we have the post list in it. That is the one that we have finally initialized over here. So why you don't see the listener over here for the post list is, you can see that it hasn't been the added the listener, so post list provider over here, because we haven't watched it. So if you have watched, then it will add to the listener. But since we are not watching, we are just reading it. So this post list provider we have make used on our post provider. So we are not watching it, so it's not added to the listener over here. So the first thing to note over here is that the provider that we create over here, let's take a look on the API service provider. This API service provider is a lazy load. Providers in the Riverpod is by default a lazy load, which means that it's not going to get initialized. Once you call that particular, once you read or once you watch that one, then only it's going to create that provider and it's going to get initialized. So if you take a look on here, we have added that the provider scope on top of this one over here. Once we add this one, it's not that all of the provider that we have are going to be created and initialized, because if you see, it's all on the it's a globally declared variable for this provider. So you may be thinking that this is a global, and then it's going to get initialized once we have this provider scope initialized. But in the Riverpod, we don't have that the situation, since it's a global. So like it's look like the global variable, but it's not going to call and initialize. It's only get initialized once you call that particular provider. Once you read it or once you watch it, then it's going to initialize. You can see that we have initialized this one, and then second to this one, and once you are on this particular page, then only it's going to get initialized. So once you come to the post list, then only it's going to initialize, because this is the place where we have initialized our future builder, that is of the post future. All right, so this is the thing that we have to note. And second is that once you get initialized, you have the option to the add a listener. So add a listener is only added once you watch it. So if you say ref.the-watch, that means the listener is added over here. And you may be wondering, what about the cancel and then the pause, resume, dispose, and all of those stuff? And you can see that once we go back from here, and you can see that now the on remove listener has been called and on cancel has been called. So this is on the post provider over here. So now the post provider is on this function, on cancel has been called, and before on cancel you can see that it has the on remove listener. So which means now if you go to the post list, we have the ref.the-watch over here. We were watching it, and then once we watch it, we have added to a listener over here, right? Added to a listener that is of the post service provider, post provider over here. And then what we did was, now we dispose that particular screen, right? So once we dispose that particular screen, you can see that we added the on remove listener. So which means that now we are not watching that anymore. We are not watching, or we are not watching it anymore. So now we should remove a listener. So the remove listener for this particular provider, it's called when there is no watcher or the listener. So in the Riverpod, you can use the ref.watch or ref.listen. So if you use these two, one is the ref.watch and another one is ref.listen. So if you use these two, then you have the add listener call. And if there is no one that is watching or listening to your provider, it will call the on remove listener over here. So once the on remove listener is called, this means there is no one watching or listening, then it will go to the on cancel. So on cancel means that the listener has been removed, and now it's on the cancel state, right? So the cancel means it's not disposed, so it's still there, but it's not listening to any of the state changes or any of the listener that you have added. So it's not listening at all. So what we will do now is we'll go back to that particular screen again, and now you can see it has added that one over here. So the provider, the post provider, it has been added to a listener, and now you don't get an init over here. So now you don't get an init. Now you went to the on resume, right? So the difference is over here. So now once we went back, once we dispose this one, so let me clear this one content, and let's say we went back from this particular screen. Now you see that we have on listener called. On listener is called over here, and which means that we are not watching it or we are not listening it, and then it went to a cancel it. So if you take a description over here, you will see that when the last listener of the provider is removed. So when is the ref.the on cancel is called is when the last listener is removed from your provider. So add a listener to perform or operate when the last listener of the provider is removed. So which means that once there is no more listener to your provider, on cancel is called. Okay, on cancel is called. It's not calling the dispose. And then once you go back to that particular screen over here, then this calls the add listener, which means now the listener has been added. So if you take a look on the documentation and a LifeCycle, for whenever a new listener is added to the provider, so which means that on listener is called whenever a new listener is added. So if you have the ref.watch or ref.listen, then this particular add listener is called, and then the on resume is called. So if you take a look on resume over here, the description, a LifeCycle when a provider is listened again after it was paused or uncancelled was triggered. So now once we say on cancel, it is something like on pause, right? So it was on the pause, and now once we added a new listener, we went from on cancel to on resume over here. So there we have learned about the on cancel over here, on resume, and then we have the add listener and then the remove listener, but we are not seeing any of these dispose over here. So why we don't see a dispose over here? Because this the future provider or the API or the provider over here, it is living throughout your application lifecycle. It doesn't have a dispose functionality over here, which means that we are not disposing this provider. So you can also dispose this provider over here. So if you say this provider, this is a provider, and it has an option to keep alive. So once you have that keep alive, which is by default, if you don't provide the auto dispose over here, it is going to live forever. It's not going to call any of the dispose function over here. So if you take a look, this has been created, and then we don't see any of the cancel, resume, dispose over there, right? So we are just watching on the post provider over here, and we are also not seeing the if you go to the post provider, we are not also seeing the dispose over here, because this by default is it once you create this one, it's not going to get disposed until you manually dispose it. So what we can do is we can add an option to have a auto dispose over here. So let's say we want to auto dispose it, right? And then let's go back to our over here, and let's make this one provider also auto dispose over here. And let's go to the post list provider. So let's also make this one as the auto dispose. So let's go and take a look what will happen once we add this auto dispose over here. So let's go to our post list. Now you will see a lot more over here. You have the init for our post provider, API service provider init, and then you have the API service provider was added to a listener, and then you have the post provider was added to a listener, and then you have post list which is on init. And now finally you see the on dispose is called on the post list provider, right? And then the another one, it's again initialize and then again dispose. So now you can see the post list provider has initialized 2 times, right? So why it was initialized 2 times is that we call the on dispose over here. So why it was disposed is, if you go back to our the post list provider, this is one, right? So here we have made it auto dispose. That is the first case. And the second case is if you go to the post provider, and here we are reading it 2 times. So if you take a look, here we are reading it 1 time. This will initialize this one, and since we don't have any of the watcher or the listener for this particular post list provider, then it's going to dispose it as soon as we read it. So once we read it, and if there is no listener added to it, right, if there is no listener added to it, then it's going to call the dispose. This is an auto dispose, right? And then we have the another time it's again calling, we are reading it, so it's going to initialize that one. So we are going to initialize that particular provider, and then now we again dispose that one over here, right? So since it doesn't has any of the listener, we are not using the ref.watch over here, and we are not using the ref.listen over here, so it's going to call that dispose for our post list provider. So I hope you got the point over here why the on dispose was called 2 times over here. And now let's go back to here, and now we can see that we have some of the undisposed calls. So now we remove the listener for the post provider, and once this on remove is called, remove listener is called, we call the on cancel. That's correct. And now we also have the on dispose over here, which means that now our post provider that we have over here has been disposed. So which means that nobody is watching to it, or nobody is listening to it, so it will dispose it. So that means now our memory has been cleared. We don't have any reference to this particular provider, right? So we don't have any reference to this provider. And then we have the API service provider. The on remove listener was called because this provider has been disposed, and we have the on cancel call and on dispose is called. So now once our post provider that we have used has been disposed, here is the one that we are watching it. So once we watch it, we are adding add to a listener for our API service provider. But once this has been disposed, it will also go and cancel that particular listener, and it's going to dispose that particular API service provider, because that is also the auto dispose. If nobody is watching to me, just go and call this particular dispose function over here. So I hope you got the point about the life cycle of the provider or the Riverpod, Flutter Riverpod provider over here. And then what will happen when we use the auto dispose, and what will happen when we don't use the auto dispose over here. So when you should use the auto dispose and when you should not use this auto dispose over here. So first thing is that if you want your provider to live as long as your application, so sometimes you may have some provider that you want to continuously watch, right? Like for the logging purpose or for some tracking purpose. So you want to create that provider and you want to continuously watch that provider throughout your application lifecycle. So if you don't have that provider, then some of the functionality inside your application is not going to work, because it needs to be always there, right? So you are continuously watching or listening that particular provider, like you are watching some stream from the listening to the stream from the APIs that has to be continuously listen and all of this stuff, right? like something that you want to continuously watch or listen. So at that time you don't have to make this as the auto dispose. Just remember, once you don't provide the auto dispose, that's going to live as long as your application. So if the user doesn't kill your application, or if the OS doesn't kill your application, then it is going to stay there on the memory. So it is a memory hungry, which doesn't mean that it will capture a lot of the memory. But if you have some of the bigger stuff, or if you are doing a lot of the computation inside it, so it will also affect the memory. So if you have thousands of the provider that is running on inside your application, if you never dispose that one, that's going to cause a problem, right? But if you have a requirement, like you go to this particular screen and then you want to initialize that, and once you come back off that screen, you don't require that provider anymore. So at that case, you have to make use of the auto dispose over here, and this will dispose the provider once you are not watching or listening it. So the point is, when to use the auto dispose is if you don't require that if you don't require that provider after you navigate out of that screen, right? So you don't have to make that provider lifelong. So you can just auto dispose that provider as soon as your screen or the activity is disposed or on dispose is called. So this way you can have the more efficient application, because your provider is not there open in the memory. And once you have application, it gets a limited memory in your the iOS or the Android device. It doesn't get a lot of the memory. So when you want to have a memory efficient application, you need to take care of your provider correctly. So if you never dispose your provider and keep your provider always there opening for or listening for something, but it doesn't have anything to do, then it will cause a lot of the problem for your application. So make sure when you are creating a provider, you know when to dispose it, when not to dispose it. So I guess that's all, and we have some more to learn about over here, how we can do the catching for this API call. So what I mean over here is that once you call this particular service, let's see, once you call the get the post, how you can cast this post over here, and once you visit it, it's not going to call multiple time. So here it's calling a multiple time. But what we can also do is we can have the catching system, because the Riverpod is the reactive and the catching framework. So we can also catch the API call, and which means that it will never call this API if our API service hasn't been disposed, right? So if it hasn't been disposed, we can make use of the catch data out of it. So we'll see that on the coming up lecture, and till then, have a great day.